Yo, what's going on, YouTube? And welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy, Kevin Forte. And today, it is time. A lot of people have started to release their mid-season rankings according to the prospects coming in the 2022 NHL Draft that will be held in Montreal. We have a couple of big storylines to get to, but the main focus in today's video is the top 10 that I have for this year's draft. And this is going to change basically by the week. So as soon as next week, we could see different rankings from me. So what I like to do, I'm not necessarily the biggest with prospects, so I try and garner up enough information from different sources, and I try to evaluate these guys based off of where I think they will go. And no surprises here, this is a very forward-heavy top 10. So we'll be going over that today. I'm going to go over the players in the top 10, some guys that have kind of fallen a little bit, some guys that have moved up, where these guys are playing, as well as a little profile on them. I do want to give credit here to Sportsnet because they did give me a couple of these guys on here. So I want to give a little shout out to them. Always a great source for your hockey news. So the first guy we have to get to here, at number 10, he's playing in the KHL, and it is Daniil Yurov, a right winger, the only right winger in this draft class. He's playing with Magnitogorsk of the KHL. We've seen some really good NHL players come from the KHL recently, and what's interesting about Yurov is this is a guy that very similar to a lot of guys that we've seen over the past decade of the NHL. Guys that are very highly regarded, Russian forwards that are projected to go in the top 5 a year from the draft class, and all of a sudden the politics of the KHL come into effect. We've seen this with a ton of guys recently. For example, Vlad Tarasenko, he was supposed to be a really highly regarded prospect. He didn't go till later in the first round because, well, the KHL, he was already playing there. There was no guarantee he would come to the NHL. We've also seen this with guys like Evgeny Kuznetsov of the Washington Capitals. Another good example really recently, Vasily Podkolzin of the Vancouver Canucks. He was projected to be a second or third overall pick in that year's draft class. He ended up falling, I think it was 11 or 16? He went like pretty late considering where he was projected the year prior to his draft. So as the season kind of went along, he wasn't getting as much playing time because, again, the politics of the KHL, and this is a perfect example of Yurov, a lot of these KHL teams and coaches know that these players, they're going to go to North America. So what ends up happening for a guy like Yurov, he doesn't get the development in the KHL because they figure, why are we going to invest in this kid when he's going to be leaving to the NHL as soon as next year? Doesn't really make much sense. Now, I understand that, but it does suck because it's really hard to figure out what a guy like Yurov brings. So a lot of people see him kind of similar to what we could see from a Podkolzin. The reason he was pretty much forced out of Russia, out of the KHL, because he wasn't getting enough playing time. He is struggling this season. I believe in 21 or 22 games this season, Yurov does not have any points yet. So a lot of people are kind of like, it's hard to invest in a top 10 pick with this guy because he's not necessarily producing. Now again, with that said, he's only playing between 4 and 5 minutes per night. It's kind of hard to put up points when you're playing that little. But Daniil Yurov, a solid, steady, two-way player with plenty of skill to be an effective point producer at the next level. So Daniil Yurov, a lot to talk about there. But again, this is a guy that's going to be interesting as we get closer to the draft. Based off of his point percentage, he might go lower. But again, the talent is there. There is raw skill there, and it's going to be hard for teams to deny that. So he definitely looks like he'll be a first-round pick. It's just a matter of where. At number 9, actually his brother, you're going to hear this name because he's currently in the NHL, was part of the expansion draft situation with Seattle. Morgan Geekie's younger brother, Connor Geekie, playing with the Winnipeg Ice of the WHL. He's a centerman, which raises his value just there. And Connor Geekie has been a name that we've heard for a lot of this year. He was projected to even be a top 5 player, kind of like Daniil Yurov earlier this year. looks like the break came just in time. There's some immaturity to his game, but from a projection standpoint, he's still very highly regarded in the scouting world. So again, there seems to be some questions about his recent suspensions in the WHL and his lack of maturity. Again, when you have guys this young, that is to be expected. We've seen plenty of NHL players have some of those similar issues, and they end up getting rectified in the NHL. And hopefully it doesn't take too many fights in the locker room for that to happen. But listen, if the talent's there and he's able to produce, there's too much on the line, despite what he may have off the ice in terms of issues. We saw it recently here with Tony DeAngelo. Teams will take chances on those players. So Connor Geekie, I don't know if it's to that extent, but that is definitely a name to keep an eye on. He's at number 9 on my list. Looking at another center here at number 8, Logan Cooley. Logan Cooley is the guy that was projected to be maybe even a second-round pick, an early second-round pick, later first-round pick. He has jumped himself all the way into the top 10. Now he's part of the U.S. National Team Development Program, and Logan Cooley is not deterred about missing an opportunity to center the American second line at the World Junior Championship. He has picked up where he left off with 4 points in 4 tight games back with the program. Logan Cooley is currently playing in college. I'm not sure exactly where he's playing in college. Actually, no, he's part of the U.S. National Development Program. So Logan Cooley has looked very good, and I wonder how things are going to play out for him here. It's almost like his stock rose so much. Is it almost going to be a detriment because he rose up so much? Again, an early second-round pick, all of a sudden top 10. Are we going to see things kind of maybe come back to terms where he ends up being selected between 16 and 25, maybe somewhere later in the first round? But as of right now, Logan Cooley is definitely the guy that has jumped up the most on our board here. Now, at number 7, we're heading back to Russia here. And I'm going to try and pronunciate his name the best I can. Playing in Omsk of the VHL, which is basically the American Hockey League of the Russian League, the KHL. Ivan Miroshnichenko. Ivan Miroshnichenko, that name may sound familiar because we've heard his name a lot here over the past year and a half. And Miroshnichenko is a mystery as to why he wasn't on Russia's World Junior team. But after the flight home, maybe it was better he wasn't. That is obviously playing off of the head coach of that Russian World Junior team from Alberta, smoking cigars on the private plane back. They got kicked off of their flight from Canada. That was definitely an interesting thing. But Ivan Miroshnichenko, unfortunately, was not part of that fun. So, I don't know, they're saying it's better off that he wasn't there, but he probably would have had a pretty good time on that flight. But with all that said, this is a kid that, again, kind of like Vasily Podkolzin, we're not sure what these Russian guys, what we really have, until they come to North America. And we'll probably take a little bit of time in the American Hockey League. But again, they kind of have that out where they're going to say, well, if you don't play me in the NHL, I'll just go back to Russia. And that is unfortunately part of it. And we saw this recently with the Rangers, with Vitaly Kravtsov. He was like, listen, you're not going to play me in the NHL. I'll just go back overseas. And, guys will do that. So, I don't know, as part of the storyline, we'll kind of keep an eye on here. But Miroshnichenko, definitely an interesting name to keep an eye on. Now, this is the only defenseman in my top 10 rankings here at this point for prospects. And it's the one that everybody's been pretty confident could potentially be a top 5 selection. Again, based off of being a defenseman, this may either lower or raise his value. Now, Simon Nemec, who is currently playing as a defenseman in HK Nitra of the Slovakian League. Nemec is a guy that is projected to be the best defenseman in this class. And there is some competition there with David Jiricek, who is currently playing in the Extraliga League. So, again, in that same European vein there. So, there's going to be a really good defenseman there from the Czech or Slovakia. And Nemec looks like a guy that he displays great two-way capabilities and possesses a high-end puck-moving ability and makes him a threat on the rush. So Nemec kind of sounds like a guy, I'm saying both pronunciations here because I'm not really sure what it is. But this kid seems like he's going to be, again, we're seeing the new form of defenseman. Quinn Hughes, even Owen Power right now. Cale Makar, Adam Fox, those defensemen, they're very good skating defensemen, and that's really what the NHL is coming to. If you can't back skate as a defenseman, those days are over. They don't work anymore. The Dion Phaneufs of the world. You could argue there's still some guys in the NHL that are kind of, limping their way around, but those guys are gone. It is more of the very good skating, talented defenseman. That is, basically another forward. And Simon Nemec kind of seems like that next generation kind of coming through the pipeline. So, again, could potentially be a top pairing defenseman, more likely looking like a top 4 pair defenseman, either a first or second pair guy. But there is a lot of hype around Nemec right now, and to my rankings, he is listed as 6. At number 5, we got Joakim Kemell. Now, this is a winger, and this guy, again, to some people, is potentially a top 3 draft pick. Now, Kemmell's playing in the Liga right now. Didn't look to be at the top of his game at the World Junior Championship, and rumors about lingering shoulder issues support that theory. That is going to be a big storyline. Will he drop? Kind of like a Peyton Krebs a couple years ago when he ended up going later to the Golden Knights. I think it was like 16th, 15th, 20th, something like that. He was projected to be a top 10 draft pick, but because of his injury situation, he ended up getting drafted later. And we've seen how good of a potential player Peyton Krebs can be. He's now with the Buffalo Sabres organization, a big piece of that Jack Eichel trade. So Joakim Kemell, again, they're still seeing him as a very highly regarded player, but there is some questions about that shoulder situation. Could that be a long-term hindrance on his development? And does a team want to invest a top 5 draft pick in a guy that's already at the age of 16, 17, 18 years old, already having shoulder problems? That is to be determined later on. But again, like a lot of these guys, the raw skill and talent is definitely there. It's just, do teams want to invest that high of a draft pick in that said player? So we're looking at another winger here, and this one is probably the craziest name other than Mreznichenko. This one is probably harder to pronounce. He's playing with TPS Turku, and we've seen some pretty good players come from there recently in the Liga. Left winger Yuraj Slovkovsky. Yes, Yuraj Slovkovsky. Now, I did make a video about him earlier this year, last summer actually. We were talking about Slovkovsky of TPS Turku. Now, you may have heard of TPS Turku recently because there was a draft pick drafted in the top 3 a couple years ago. Capo Kakko played at TPS Turku. So we're seeing another guy here from that Finnish region area. Too good for the under-20 league and not quite ready to log the top 6 minutes in the Liga. But with his size, puck handling ability, and power to his game, there's plenty to like. Again, that right there kind of sounds like a Capo Kakko protege. So that is pretty exciting there. Again, he's projected to be the 6th overall pick. According to Sportsnet, a lot of people have had him in the top 5, in the top 10. So he could go anywhere in that mix. But obviously, they've been producing some pretty good players recently. So that is definitely a name to keep an eye on. I have him at number 4, Yuraj Slovkovsky. So that's the last time I'll be saying his name in today's video. So now we get up to the top 3. And this hasn't changed really a whole lot from really since the summertime. It's the same sort of names, maybe in a little bit of a different order. So the first one we're going to go over here at number 3, playing in the WHL as a centerman for the Winnipeg Ice, is Matthew Savoie. So Matt Savoie thinks the game so well and has the hands and vision to execute. And a compliment is his high hockey IQ, which is critical as a centerman in the league. Sounds like a guy that, we see a lot of these players where in juniors they play center. Then when they come to the NHL, they move to the wing. Matt Savoie looks like a pureborn centerman, a natural center. So Matt Savoie, again, a lot of good things from Winnipeg this season. I could see him having a pretty good spot in the draft. again, when you go to the WHL, there's a lot of WHL guys this year, and they're not defensemen, surprisingly. But he is a guy that I think a lot of people are very high on. Again, you can't really teach hockey IQ. That's just instincts. That is definitely going to bode well for him going into the draft. Now looking at number 2, and this is what we're kind of coming to here. A lot of people have, it's pretty much the debate between 1 and 2 at this point. But the gap between 1 and 2 is still high. But Brad Lambert right now, who's playing in JYP of the Liga, definitely gaining some traction there in the top 3. Brad Lambert, it was only 2 games at the World Junior Championships, but great to see Lambert apply himself, playing with his peers. The pandemic is wreaking havoc on Liga play, likely making for a 2-week break between games. But that's what they have with the scouting report. But Brad Lambert, I've seen him as a center. They have him listed as a winger. I'm going to assume he's going to be, drafted as a winger. But that's a nice little adage, which may be gaining some value for him. So he's technically a winger. They have him listed as a left winger, but I have seen sites that have listed him as a center. So Brad Lambert, an interesting name to keep an eye on. Again, World Junior stock is definitely going to be applied to a lot of players. And I think Brad Lambert, again, it was only 2 games, but he definitely got a bump up. But the big question for Lambert is, he was a difference maker for his team. But again, that's the kind of stuff that they're looking for, because on a team like his, you're looking for, he may be one of the best players on his team, and he's still able to produce, because you have to think other teams, they're going to be keying on Brad Lambert. They know where everybody knows where he's listed. They know where he's projected to go. They were going to key in on him. And the fact he was able to produce at that level still, despite all the scouting already done on him, that's what separates the great player from the elite. And I think Brad Lambert in the World Junior Championships, again, in a very small sample size, showed that he has that potential. All right, so now we get to the first overall pick. And this is unanimous. It hasn't changed since the summer. I did a video over the summer. This was the cover boy of that video. Playing in the OHL with the Kingston Frontenacs, it is still Shane Wright. Shane Wright has been the consensus first overall pick in the 2022 NHL Draft for probably 2 years now. And a lot of people are saying this is a lesser draft class because it doesn't have Connor Bedard or Matvei Michev, who was projected to go next year in that draft. He isn't in that same vein of first overall pick player, but he is still going to be a really, really nice player first overall, whoever gets him in this year's draft class. And he's a center as well. So he caught fire before the World Junior Championship, then had 2 average games in that said World Junior Championship. He's still the undisputed top player available. And a lot of people, before this, in the beginning of January, end of December, were kind of, raising the question, probably to get some clicks. Is Shane Wright the first overall pick? Is it still consensus? I've seen a lot of people that have said it is still consensus. Lambert and Kemmel and Savoie have definitely made an argument, but at this point, Shane Wright is in his own category right now. He's still in his own universe as the upper echelon of this draft and the consensus number 1 overall, according to a lot of different people. Sportsnet, Hockey Prospects, Hockey News, all of those guys still have Shane Wright as the number 1 overall draft pick. And guys, I wouldn't be able to make this video if I didn't do a tankathon for you. So we're going to go look at the tankathon, tankathon.com. If your team's not doing very well this year, you want some optimism, go to tankathon.com and they could do a draft lottery simulation. So we're going to do that right now. So right now, you're looking at the top 5. You have Buffalo, Ottawa, Seattle, Arizona, and the host team here, the Montreal Canadiens, who are hosting the NHL Draft this year. Maybe, are they doing this on purpose? Maybe. And another couple of teams here looking at the top 10. The Blue Jackets have 2 picks in the top 10. They have Chicago's pick from Seth Jones. So they have Chicago's pick at 8. They also have their own pick at 10. The Islanders with the 9th best odds here. So the Islanders here, that would be very interesting, right? The Devils and the Flyers round out that top 10. So let's run the sim lottery. Let's see what we get. Okay, so nothing too crazy here. So we've got the Arizona Coyotes moving down a spot. They have the number 3 spot. The the Canadiens, they don't get the first overall pick. They get the second overall pick. I know people would say this is rigged, but moving up 2 spots, the Seattle Kraken would be getting the first overall pick and would technically be drafting Shane Wright from the OHL. So guys, that is it for today's video. If you like what we're doing here at Goal Line Hockey, want to see the latest news around the NHL and more videos just like this one, you guys know what to do. Make sure to give this video a big thumbs up. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again next time.